So it's been about a week now, and we have Boston College's new AD, Blake James, and it's starting to sit a little bit with us. So we're going to talk about the positives, negatives, and everything in between about Boston College's new AD on today's Locked On Boston College. This is Locked On Boston College, AJ Black. Today's episode is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline has got you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline, where the game starts. So we're joined by Mitch Wolfe, who joins us every Monday for Mondays with Mitch. Mitch, how's it going?
Going good. Excited to discuss this new AD and kind of the future direction of Boston College athletics.
So let's get into this because it's now been about a week since Blake James was announced, and credit to Mark Blouchin, who never gets anything right, got this one right. So good for him. But James has, he's had his introductory press conference. It's kind of settled with fans, and the overwhelming feeling around his hire is almost, I would say, like 90% negative at this point. It doesn't seem like many people are all that excited. They just had his press conference, and it wasn't a peep about it. Like, you had a few, beat reporters that just feel like they have to do it, covering it. And then no one else talking about it. There was no like buzz of it afterwards. Mitch, talk about this hire. Where are you at? Kind of like, what's your first talking point on this?
So when I first saw this come down the pipeline and we kind of got the word that this was going to happen, I looked into this guy and I was like, okay, like he seems to be like generally competent in terms of running a program. And I think a lot of people were like, oh, this is a terrible hire because like Miami wasn't very good over the last few years. And I think you have to consider where they started in terms of coming back from the Nevin Shapiro scandal and how hamstrung their program was in the aftermath of that. It's kind of like if you think about like how Penn State had to kind of come back from the sanctions stemming from the Jerry Sandusky, Joe Paterno scandal. So, handling all of that is a pretty big deal for athletic director. And, I would say that in the last, 5 to 7 or 8 years, Miami's been, at least in football, has been improving. Like because for a while they were kind of nothing. And at least in the last 5 or so years, they've had some, impressive years that have gotten them back on the map. I wouldn't say the U is fully back yet, but they've had, a few good seasons. The problem with this hire for me, at least upon kind of, I think the biggest thing was when you read the language from the press conference from James and Father Leahy is this seems like a hire to just get somebody that will be in the building for a long time, as opposed to somebody who, and I think like Jarmond and Kraft, who said they would be here for the long haul and they weren't. And he wanted somebody who is a lot older and, maybe doesn't have, the future prospects of, improving his lot in college football or college athletics like those younger guys did. So he's saying, okay, I'm going to go with somebody who has a ton of experience, who kind of needs help getting back into the game. And, they might actually be here for a long time.
And that just seems like such a short-sighted way of looking at.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's depressing as someone who covers it. I have always been in the camp that, if you get a guy like Jarman, he's here for 3 or 4 years. Your Kraft, I know his reign was a little shorter, but I'm all about BC being a stepping stone program. I know some folks want them to be like, you're a lifer here and blah, blah, blah. I'm not. You have to understand the landscape of college sports to understand where BC lands. And to get these younger guys, Kraft, Jarman, they were both in that top executives under 40 list for a while. They were both high up and comers. There's nothing wrong with that. And the fact that it sounds like Father Leahy picked somebody who looks like him, oddly enough.
Yeah, we had a very funny text message where we were saying that we both sent a message we each received at the same time that said he looks like Father Leahy physically, which is funny.
Yeah, and to get a guy like that, it just seems like I thought Boston College had made some progress in terms of pushing forward. It seems like they just took a step back.
Yeah, I just don't think this isn't an imaginative hire. Like and I think there is kind of the other side of this coin. It's from somebody who I believe you've had on this podcast, and one of the few accounts in the BC Twitter sphere that I respect, Heights and Lows.
Yep.
Who said that there aren't a lot of big projects that whoever the next athletic director would have to be like that has to get approved. Like you think about how Jarmond and Kraft kind of got the indoor practice facility. There's movement on the basketball practice facility, all that kind of stuff. Like there really isn't that big project in athletics that whoever would be the next guy like has to take on. So that is part of, you kind of just want somebody who is going to be competent in navigating this new era of college athletics with relation to NIL. And, for what it's worth, James was at Miami, which was a big NIL program for the last few years. And I think that had Miami not kind of made this huge culture shift where they're like, all right, we're just going to go absolutely all in, balls to the wall, hire Clemson's guy, go get Mario Cristobal. I think if they had been kind of on a, again, not as aggressive a track, I think they would have been fine with keeping James. They just wanted to really, kick things up a notch. But, and like I said, I think James is doing a decent job with the NIL stuff, but I think they could have found somebody who's a little younger and a little more tapped into what a modern athletic director needs to be.
And to be fair, I mean, to make it sound even more dire, the names that the other guys that were the finalists, none of them sound impressive to me. Like none of them were any guys that I was like, I'd love to get that. Like the AD from Army. Yeah. He's, any guy from Army is always, they're working against unbelievable odds to get that program working. But, as we talked about the need for NIL understanding, I don't understand how someone from Army would be able to do that. Or they could, but it seems like it would be a big stretch. And then the AD from LaSalle, again, smaller school. I haven't seen LaSalle do much of anything, so they kind of don't check any boxes for me. The one name that I heard, and I heard it right off the beginning, and I forget her name already, is an assistant AD at Florida. I thought she might have been like in that same upper echelon of younger, smaller administrators in terms of like not an actual AD, but like assistant AD. Thought she would be a good fit, but they went the safe route and they went with Blake James.
Is it Linda Teeler?
Yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah. Never mind. I won't say that. Yeah, I just think it's boring. And I think this is, it has a lot to do with Leahy kind of wanting to flex his muscles over the athletics department, saying like, I want to hire a guy that like, that I see myself in the mirror and I, feel comfortable trusting with this. And James even said, I plan on being here through retirement. So like, he's saying like, oh, I'm going to be here for a very long time, whether you like it or not, it seems.
Yeah. I mean, I think that the question every BC fan has had, and whether you say it or not, is how much longer Father Leahy has left as president. I think a lot of folks are wondering. I feel like it's not unreasonable to say that some folks would rather see what some young blood or new blood would think about like the role of athletics at Boston College, because we know where Father Leahy stands.
Yeah, I think a lot of people, especially young alumni, would really like to see Father Leahy, take a step back for reasons that go even beyond athletics.
Yeah. Well, anyways, in a moment, we'll talk a little bit about some of the things that Blake James is going to need to do at Boston College. We'll look at, some of what his checklist should be. And I'm sure Mitch has some other thoughts that we'll add as well. BetOnline.net is your number one source for all your betting stats and sports information. Find all the latest sports developments, news, odds, including the National Basketball Championship matchup, the NHL Hockey Conference Finals, Major League Baseball, and of course, all the latest fighting news from MMA and UFC 2 boxing. They even had wrestling odds up on Sunday night if you were watching Hell in a Cell on pay-per-view. BetOnline is your continued source for all your sporting wagering information, including live betting, esports, and more. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends in action. Head on over to BetOnline, where the game starts. This is AJ Black. I'm joined by Mitch Wolfe, and we're talking Blake James, getting Mitch's take on some of these things. So, Mitch, Blake James comes here, and you had mentioned in the first segment that he doesn't have a huge, bucket list that he has to do. We have the practice facility, we have for basketball coming, we've had the baseball facility. What do you think are some of the things that he needs to do once he gets to Boston College?
I think the big, and this isn't, this is kind of a goal that is just going to be ever present. There isn't really an end goal to it, but it's, modernizing BC's approach to NIL and just kind of keeping pace with how that is going to change the landscape of college sports. And that is a pretty, and I think that we've seen a lot of schools have varying degrees of success and efficiency in dealing with that. And it'll be interesting to see how he handles it. I think Miami did a pretty solid job since they, instituted these kind of rules in recent years. So it's good to see that he was at least on top of it. I'm hoping that he can continue that, help BC athletes get more NIL deals. And, I think I would ideally like there to be, some more rules coming down from the NCAA, if they decide to do so, which, it's hard to predict what the NCAA will do at any given time. So I think that's really the biggest thing in terms of, more tangible goals that are just, you do them and they're done. I think that, and this one isn't even as tangible, but just getting the basketball team to a, competent level. And I think they're kind of moving in the right direction with Earl Grant. But I think you saw, during James's tenure with Miami, Jim Larinaga comes in, he makes Miami like a pretty relevant ACC program in terms of,
Right.
getting wins in the tournament, in the ACC tournament, getting to the NCAA tournament, and, winning a game or two there. And that's where you want to see BC basketball get to. And, frankly, I'm not the biggest basketball person, so I don't know exactly how that works. Yep. But, I think just having him, be willing to invest, and like you said, like him supporting the basketball practice facility and just helping Earl Grant any way he can to help resurrect that program.
Yeah, I think basketball is going to be a big one. And, in terms of facilities, I think BC should continue to look at evolving a lot of what they have on campus. And, I think one thing you might want to consider is either completely renovating Conti for 2 sports, or using some of the land that they have to build a hockey only facility or a basketball only facility, obviously have one for each. I think that would be something that they should honestly consider doing. And then I think a lot of fans are still clamoring, and I'm not on board. Like, I think it needs to be done, but I'm not sure how you do it, is continuing to renovate Alumni Stadium.
Yeah, that's a big one. And there are obviously serious limitations to that just because of the amount of space they have. And obviously the power and influence that, the towns of Chestnut Hill and Newton and all that exercise over BC, and kind of limits their ability and what they can do with alumni. But I obviously, like, modernized stadium, we saw Jarman do a lot for that in terms of like getting alcohol sales in the stadium. That's huge. And, doing some good things to tweak tailgating. You want to see James, and it'll be interesting for James because, Miami obviously has a lot of unique issues with that kind of stadium experience stuff, because they didn't really have to worry about that with football because it was the Miami Dolphins stadium, so they don't really exercise any control over that. And that stadium was also very far away. So that'll be an interesting variable to see how James handles that, having this on-campus small stadium that they are in charge of. So, I'm not exactly sure what renovations they would, be targeting first, especially ones that would, positively affect the fan experience immediately. But I think that'll be an interesting thing to track for him in his tenure with BC early on.
Yeah, I mean, there's the simple things the fans always ask for, which is, like bathrooms in the upper deck.
Yeah.
I mean, even simple things like improving the luxury boxes. I used to work at a company that had a luxury box at Alumni Stadium, and I was never impressed by them. It just seemed like a conference room, basically, with seats. Mm-hmm. Little things like that. I feel like that would lead to more money and kind of bring things in. But I think you could do a lot of little things there. And I've always talked about, I'm a big concessions fan, and I think BC's always lags behind there. Looking into how you can improve that would be a big thing. But I think he's got a lot of things in terms of facilities to look at. And I know, Mitch, this is not your cup of tea, but I think he's got one big personnel decision laying in front of him right now, and that is what he needs to do about the baseball program. Mm-hmm. BC baseball went a beautiful 5-25 in ACC play this year. They were dead last in literally any category you can think of, or second. I'm being facetious here. They were second, third, or last in almost every single category you can think of in the conference. They got to start thinking about what they're going to do about Mike Gambino, because I know he is a popular guy amongst BC alumni, but I have a hard time gauging why people think he could be the future of this program, because everything seems to be going backwards. Now, this is going to be a perfect opportunity for James to show, I am forward thinking. I understand things need to change. Yes, he's been here forever, but I have a vision. This is going to be what we need to do. He's still the head coach right now. And I know James doesn't take over to July 1st, but I think that is going to be something that we'll have to watch to see, kind of get a good gauge on where he is at in terms of personnel changes within coaching.
Yeah. And like, I've been one for advocating for dropping baseball in favor of men's lacrosse or something else. But now with building that whole new baseball stadium, that's really not a realistic option, because you're not going to, invest all that money and then just scrap the program a few years later. But
right.
And creating a winning baseball program at Boston College again comes with a lot of unique challenges, mostly due to the weather and just recruiting bases. No pun intended. But I think he might give Gambino a year early, not even a full season, but just like, all right, like we'll start out 2022, we'll see, or 2023, whenever baseball season starts, and say like, all right, like you're on the shortest of leashes. Like if this starts to spiral like it did last season, especially because and this is what doesn't make sense. Like BC has like talented players that are getting drafted at the MLB. Like they are like, I can't remember most things, but I hear you talk about them on the pod. Thank you. Yeah. Guys you talk about on the podcast, like, all right, these dudes are like good players and this team is just getting absolutely manhandled every week or every game.
Mike King is like one of the best relievers on the Yankees right now, or he might be even starting, and he was on BC.
Yeah. So, I think he'll give Gambino at least the start of next season, but if things start to take a turn like they did this year, I think the rug could get pulled out pretty quickly.
Yeah. I think that's going to be something worth watching. And we'll talk a lot more about that as, Blake James gets the start, gets the call. July 1st is his start date, but I still think he could still make a move before that. I think he could say, hey, this is what we're going to do. We'll start the search as soon as I take over, or even before that. So
he could already be like, moving some pieces behind the scenes saying like, all right, like who, like, am I going to like have to run this search? Who are guys that I'd be interested in hiring for this position, and kind of gauging preliminary interest in the position.
All right. In our final segment, we're going to get all positive with this. I'm going to talk to Mitch about things maybe we can actually like about Blake James, and we'll get into that in just a moment. Don't you love a chewy chocolatey brownie? What about a caramel brownie with caramel swirled on top? So good. What if I told you that you can have all that chewy chocolatey goodness plus 17 grams of protein? Well, you're in luck, because caramel brownie bars are available at built.com right now. You got to act fast because they're a fan favorite and they sell out quick. Forget about dessert. They are better than dessert. Plus the macros are crazy good. 130 calories, 17 grams of protein, and only 4 grams of sugar. I would replace a regular brownie with a Built caramel brownie bar in a heartbeat. And the best part, they're 100% covered in real chocolate. You don't have to sacrifice taste for health. You can have both. And all Built bars are made with collagen protein, which your body absorbs more efficiently and provides tons of health benefits. Now, all you have to do is go to Built.com right now and use promo code LOCK15. You're going to get 15% off your order. Again, use promo code LOCK15 for 15% off at Built.com. Locked on Boston College, AJ Black. We are chatting about Blake James with Mitch Wolfe. We're looking at what makes this guy tick. What is it about this guy? What about this new AD Boston College hired? And our first segment was talking a little bit about the negativity around him, and understandably so. But it doesn't have to always be negative. Mitch, is there anything that you've seen that it's like, okay, maybe this could work at Boston College?
So, I mentioned, him getting Miami back from the brink of, hell or whatever in terms of their Nevin Shapiro scandal. I think that is a good thing to have. I don't think BC's going to have any kind of scandals like that, but just having that under your belt is a good thing to have for athletic director, getting this program back to a place where it is a valuable and recognizable brand again. Another thing that's unique with Miami is, Miami has obviously its reputation, but it is still a pretty good academic school. It has a lot of really interesting professional opportunities. And if you read James's previous bio on Miami's website, it really focuses on how he has emphasized academics and community outreach during his time there, and how the student athletes, were involved in the community and were high achieving students. And with BC, that's something you always want to see with the student athletes, and to have it coming from the top down is very important. So I think that is a good thing. I think one of the things that I'm very interested to see how James handles is, we talk a lot about, Jeff Hafley, kind of, will he use this position as a stepping stone to a next job for him? And depending on how this season goes, I think it could be very interesting to see how James reacts, because I think if Hafley has the positive season that we expect, could he try to sign Hafley to one of those, big long-term extensions? And I think that that's something that he will be good at. He's done, obviously, like, he's been at Miami for a long time. He's done a lot of negotiating of contracts. Obviously their football team, their coaching staff has been kind of in flux for a little while, but, he knows how to deal with a lot of different types of personalities. But I think just generally his experience of working with this private school in a big city, in a city that is a professional sports market, he at least has that experience under his belt.
Yeah, I think there is some pieces here, and you know, it's hard to stay positive. I admit it myself. Like I wanted a new fresh name here. Blake James is clearly not that. And I don't know if you got a chance to listen to the press conference, but it was just like it felt like an AI bot that talks about college athletics created, and it was just spitting out the usual catchphrases that you get all over
The spirit of amateurism.
Yeah, basically that. And I was just like, I am done. And like all the comments and the quotes from it, I'm like, I mean, my readers aren't gonna care.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah. It's so blasé, all of his early quotes, and I think a lot of the reason why this hire came down is because like him and Leahy just connected on a lot of different levels, just because I think they're probably just very similar people. So I'm willing to give this a chance for at least a few years. I think that Leahy is going to give him a pretty long leash because he wants continuity at this position. So, and I think that a lot of people got really upset about this, and I think we have to remember that honestly, in terms of like on-field results, I guess within each season, the athletic director doesn't really like have that much to do with it. So I think that there's a lot of other things that you probably want to spend your time getting stressed and thinking about with relation to BC athletics. So I think that this athletic director, especially with how we talked about, he doesn't have these major projects he needs to do that need to be completed in the short term. So I think that he could be kind of a face that you're just not going to see a lot. And I think that that's fine, honestly.
I think it's a great point, right? Like everyone sees the AD as being like this all-knowing person that does so much. They basically have they run the programs and basically make sure that there's no crap going on that will get, sanctions and things like that. They fundraise and they hire and fire coaches. So I think BC fans are so stuck on Brad Bates and D. Filippo completely botching hiring and firing coaches that they think that they have this like humongous role in how things run. If Jeff Halfley and Earl Grant and Joanna McNamee and, Acacia Walker Weinstein and some of the other coaches are all doing great, he doesn't have to do anything and you won't even hear about him. Right.
Yeah, exactly. And like a lot of those coaches are doing such great jobs, at least, some of them with pretty short tenures thus far. But I really just don't think you're going to see that much of this guy. Yeah. Again, he's much like Father Leahy. You're not going to see much of him during his tenure. So,
right.
And that's fine. Like, this is one of those things where it's almost like when we talk about like offensive linemen in games, like you don't want to hear the names called because that means they're messing up. You really don't want to hear your athletic director's name that much because if you are, there might be something going wrong.
Right. Pat Kraft for the last 2 years, he wasn't on social media. He was behind the scenes. I was at games and you barely ever see him. And that was kind of the way he did things. And I think Blake James will be just like that, right? Like kind of he's not going to be shaking hands and kissing babies like Martin Jarman was. He's going to be that kind of behind the scenes thing. And if the program, I think that's going to be two major factors you're going to look at what he does. Is he going to be able to continue raising money for capital projects? Because I know some BC fans think that you can use the endowment for things like that. You cannot. I know they have billions of dollars in an endowment that is not for projects like that for the last time. It has to be fundraised.
The other thing about that is like, you think about like a guy like Jarman, who is this, very front facing, interacting with fans all the time and doing all this stuff. And I think James could kind of bring a bigger school attitude. And what I mean by that is, he's more focused on, not necessarily kissing babies, but, smoothing or greasing the palms of the people that have $1 billion worth donors that are like, all right, these are the people that, for lack of a better term, matter to the success of the program moving forward. Seeing Jarman at tailgates on Saturday mornings, afternoons, that's great and all, but like, what does that really do for the program in terms of its long-term visions? And I think that James might be a little better at that, given his experience. Like, hey, like I'm going to, meet with these people that can actually impact this program by, like you said, investing in those capital projects and investments that'll improve the fortunes of this program.
And that honestly, as much as hiring and firing is a big thing, that fundraising is the biggest role an AD has.
Yeah.
And if he can nail that behind the scenes for a school like BC, and be able to build some things here, that's successful. And as long as he doesn't let a coach go on and on, like, I don't know, Jim Christian, for instance, I think he'll be successful. So we talked about our AD for a half hour, Mitch. Mitch, where can people find you on social media?
You can find me at Mitchell T Wolfe, WOLFE. I've been a little absent as of late, kind of just taking a little break from Twitter, which was much needed and very helpful. But now that summer's here, going to have some free time on my hands. So I'm going to hopefully get back into watching some film, tweeting about BC and other, football related things. So make sure you're following me there.
All right. Reminder, we are on our summer schedule. So we're on a 3-day-a-week schedule. I will be back on Wednesday for Recruiting Wednesday. We'll have any news that pops up as well during that. But it's a humongous month of June right now for BC recruiting. The next 3 weekends are huge official visit weekends where they've had 20 or so major recruits coming on campus. And I've started to interview some of them, and I will have interviews with them after they step foot off campus. So you want to make sure you become a BC Bulletin premium member. It's only $1 for the first month, $5 a month. After that, it's a great deal. Just go to bcbulletin.com and hit that subscribe button as you're listening to this to get all the news that you want. Plus, you get to become part of our Discord channel and our premium boards on Maroon and Gold forums. This is AJ Black. You can follow me on Twitter at AJ Black_BC or on Locked On BC on Twitter as well. We'll see you all again soon. Take care.